Hundreds of years from now, humankind will leave our planet behind and search the stars to settle elsewhere. Our home has withered into a wasteland of our own creation, consequences of our own actions, which were completely avoidable along the way. In this game, we play as something resembling human, picking through what's left of society. Days are spent running through the bombed-out remains of civilization, trying to piece together what went wrong and maybe how to fix it, if that's even a possibility. But enough about Pokemon Pokopia. Let's talk about Marathon. Actually, let's talk about the original Titanfall for a second. During the Xbox briefing at E3 of 2013, Titanfall was announced as a launch title for the upcoming and doomed Xbox One. It was by the newly formed Respawn Entertainment, which was best known for games like Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, a game with a famously good single-player campaign and an industry-shifting multiplayer experience. Titanfall was pitched as a blurring of the line between those two kinds of experiences. As you continued to play multiplayer matches, a single-player campaign would unfold around you. This would continue round after round after round until the story wrapped up. As producer Drew McCoy put it in an interview with Game Informer, the idea of trying to take a single-player experience and imprinting it onto a multiplayer world was not something we came to immediately. We really wanted to try and meld the two together and get our strengths combined and just make one big, deep, awesome experience that everyone could see all of. Conceptually, merging these two disparate game modes was a really good idea. It was a stellar idea. It leaned heavily on both of Respawn's strengths as a studio and pushed the genre forward into something new. In practice, it didn't quite work out. I remember buying an Xbox One just to play Titanfall. Like, at launch, I bought an Xbox One, I sat down, I played through the entire campaign of Titanfall 1 in probably like 4 hours, maybe 5 hours max. Realized that the entire thing was basically just an on-ramp into the multiplayer, and then ended up selling my Xbox One at the end of that very same week. Also, the campaign was kind of unintelligible because you would be trying to play a competitive PvP shooter, and the story as it was playing out was literally just like a picture-in-picture window of somebody yelling at you, which was more distracting than interesting, I guess, at the end of the day. I think it's notable that Respawn ended up bailing on that idea entirely when they made a Titanfall 2, and we ended up getting what is one of the best single-player campaigns in a video game, period, because of it. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. But I share the same sentiment that a lot of other people had when Titanfall was released, which is that it's a really cool idea, just wasn't executed perfectly. And a lot of other games have tried to pick up that baton and run with it ever since. You could even argue that Fortnite, every time it blows up its map every 8 to 12 months, is also trying to do something similar. Actually, I don't think that counts. I've changed my mind about that one. The point is, Marathon does what Titanfall don't. Marathon is a 2026 video game made by Bungie Incorporated, a studio best known for Halo, literally Halo, the game that redefined the console first-person shooter. If you go back and you play pre-Halo console first-person shooters, it is a night and day experience. The pre- and post-Halo line, it's huge. That shift between those two. As Halo continued, Bungie's games became synonymous with the best gunplay in video games, and I still think that's true to this day. This carried forth into Destiny, which was a pretty big deal, a big enough deal that they got Paul McCartney, literally Sir Paul McCartney, to write and perform a theme song for the video game. And there's a music video for this theme song, and it's super weird. Is it even still online, or did they take it down? I wouldn't be surprised if they took it down, but if it's still there, you should go watch it. But like I said, Destiny was supposed to be a big deal. Kind of like Titanfall was supposed to be blurring the line between single and multiplayer games, Destiny was a whole new take on the MMO. In Destiny, you and a couple other people could run through these big public open spaces with other people running through them and complete story missions, and when you got tired of that, you could jump into like traditional PvP multiplayer. There were only 3 core classes that you could play as, and gone were the little toolbars of all of the actions and attacks that you had with little cooldown windows for each of them. You just shoot gun in Destiny. You just run around and you shoot gun. And yes, there are a couple like big space magic blasts that do have cooldowns, but for the most part, you just shoot gun. And let me tell you, shoot gun was good in Destiny. I loved Destiny so much. I was working for a video game website at the time when the alpha for Destiny came out, and I was tasked with covering it. And boy, did I get hooked literally from the alpha of Destiny. I was hook, line, and sinker in, because I've been looking for an MMO for a long time. I really wanted to get into an MMO, and I tried so many of them, and none of them really clicked for me. And I think the brilliance of Destiny, at the core of it, is that Bungie was able to take a genre that famously was like overly complex and convoluted, and pared it back and found like a cleaner on-ramp for new players. There are a lot of people, I imagine, who started playing Destiny who had no idea that it was rooted in the MMO as a genre in the first place. The reason I bring all of this up is that this was my expectation for Marathon. Marathon is an extraction shooter, and an extraction shooter is a game where you load into a battle royale style map and you run around and you try to pick up a bunch of loot and then you try to escape without dying. If you die at any point, you lose all the loot you picked up and everything that you brought with you into that run, because you have this big vault that you're building up of all of your gear that you've accumulated from all of your successful runs prior to that. And the idea is literally just to drop in, get better loot than you already have, better gear than you already have, and then leave. That's the extraction shooter genre in a nutshell.
In and out. That's what a hamburger's all about.
My hope for Marathon was that Bungie would do for extraction shooters what they did for MMOs with Destiny. There are a couple extraction shooters that are pretty successful and people talk about all the time. Escape from Tarkov being, the big one, along with Arc Raiders, the big one from last year. But I will say personally, the genre has never really clicked for me. I've played Tarkov, I've played Arc Raiders. I thought they were both fine, but didn't quite serve the interest that I had in particular while playing. Tarkov is very hardcore. It's very survival based. There are a lot of systems at play. Arc Raiders is, interestingly, I think, and narratively focused on cooperation between players. When you're out in the world, they have proximity chat, and you can talk to other people who are playing the game, and you can say, please don't shoot me. Why don't we work together? And that's because narratively, you are the last bastion of humanity fighting against these giant robots called the Ark. There's a whole crafting aspect to Arc Raiders that I just find to be one too many systems that I don't really need. The quests are very, very boring, if I'm being totally honest. And although the Ark look really cool, I like the way the robots look, and fighting them is really genuinely interesting. The game itself I find to be it's okay. It's pretty good. I had a good time playing Arc Raiders. I didn't have a bad time, but I didn't love it the way I think a lot of other people loved it. With every Bungie game, that the table stakes are that it's going to feel better than every other video game. So table stakes for Marathon was that the first-person shooter gunplay was going to be, literally world class. But then you have this aesthetic. And oh my god, the aesthetic in this game is unbelievable. I mean, design-wise, Marathon is ridiculous. It's so gorgeous at all times. There are very few games that I would put in the same caliber as Marathon from an aesthetic design perspective. It's Marathon, off the top of my head, Marathon, Wind Waker, Okami, Persona 5. These are games that are extremely, extremely strong in their design sensibilities. And I'll get into this later, but there's a reason also that Marathon looks the way it does. I mean, besides the fact that it's supposed to take place 1,000 years in the future just about, but when you're out in the world and everything has these bright, vibrant colors, they're all in the CMYK color space because everything in this world is being 3D printed. That's the kind of attention to detail that we have in the design of this thing. It's so interesting. So besides just the gunplay and the aesthetic, what does Marathon have to offer the extraction shooter genre? Well, honestly, and this is maybe a hot take, but I see it as kind of a diversion from the extraction shooter genre in that, at least so far, my experience has been I care 0% about the loot that I'm bringing into a run. It's always fun to successfully complete a run. It's always fun to exfil and have a bunch of gear with me, but usually I just throw it in the vault and I probably end up selling it eventually. The reason for that is that there's a stronger focus on quests and faction objectives than there is on actually picking up and retaining loot in this game, in my opinion. I find that core loop fun. I like going down and dropping down and, picking up everything. It's basically like playing Skyrim, except that's the point of the game is you're just supposed to pick up everything you see and put it in your backpack and then leave. But the real core of Marathon is that there are 6 factions that you can talk to, and each of them allow you to play the game in a slightly different way, and each of them are asking you to play the game in a different way. Each of these factions have different objectives, and as long as I'm completing my objectives, I'm happy. I have not had a run where I had a bunch of loot on me and then I got shot and died, where I was oh damn, I really wish I kept that gun or that shield or that core or whatever. The only times I've actually been damn, I really wish this run didn't end this way is when I'm very close to completing an objective or a faction quest that I've been given that needs to be accomplished in a single run. The first faction you meet is called Cyber Acme, which amazing name. I mean, it's camp. We just have to acknowledge that Cyber Acme as a name is camp. It's very funny. It gets shortened to SciAc, which is genuinely cool. It's very interesting how it straddles the line between the cool and camp spectrum. Cyber Acme is the first faction you meet, and Cyber Acme is really just all about introducing you to the core fundamentals of how to play an extraction shooter and also introducing you to the other factions. For example, MIDA. MIDA is one of the first ones you'll probably meet, and it stands for the Martian Interplanetary Defense Alliance, which in the lore, in case you're wondering, was basically a rebel group that wanted Mars to be independent from Earth. Mars was essentially set up as a space colony of Earth, but Mars was like, what if we were just our own thing? And then basically turned into, I would say, like Avalanche from Final Fantasy VII about it. But the version of Mida that appears in this video game is very, very, very far from their home planet of Mars, and they're basically just like an anti-space cop faction. Their whole deal is like, we hate the cops, ACAB, etc. So all their quests are like, go blow up UESC robots and like smash windows, literally. They have this like very funny, kind of edgy, if you're 14, anarchist bent to them. I find them very funny and kind of charming in that way. Mida is also responsible for the Mida multi-tool, one of the best guns in Destiny. Sekaguchi Genetics, or SecGen, which they all have fun shortened names. SecGen is the company that literally makes the 3D printed shells that your conscious mind inhabits when you're going out on a run. It's worth mentioning that in the lore of this game, every single time you go on a run and you die, you are getting absolutely brutalized by debt. It costs a lot to inhabit a shell and go run out in the world. And every time you die and that shell explodes, you are even further in debt. This game is dystopic, and it has a story and lore, and it is very much about like endgame capitalism and what it looks like when there are only 6 companies left. Keep that in mind. But Sekaguchi Genetics makes these shells, and all of their quests are about like pushing these shells to their limits. You are literally doing like user testing for these shells to make them better in service of an AI weave worm named Nona, who I am obsessed with. Their quests are things like jump from really high places and take fall damage, or use all of your stamina multiple times in one run, just to like see what the shells are capable of. Arachne is interesting because they're literally a death cult, and in this cyberpunk world where, you know, your consciousness is uploaded somewhere and you can just download it into all of these different runner shells over time, basically that's immortality, right? Like you have to assume on some level that's immortality. If you want to play a game that argues that point specifically, go play Soma. Really good video game, one of the best. But Arachne's whole deal is that, well, if everyone's immortal, then there needs to be a balancing of the scales between life and death. So all of their quests are literally just about PvP. It's all about just going and finding other players and shooting them and killing them, and sometimes stabbing them to death while they're down on the ground. Arachne thinks that by killing people over and over and over again, you're like enlightening them. The only way to continue having new experiences as an immortal being is through death. So Arachne's like, we're doing everybody a favor by stabbing them to death multiple times. It's brutal, man. It's brutal. New Caloric and Traxxas are kind of two sides of the same coin as well. New Caloric is like Nightmare Amazon meets Monsanto meets like dark IKEA, and then Traxxas is basically like, you know, far future Lockheed Martin. All of their quests are about going in and extracting things. All of their quests generally revolve around like going and doing a couple objectives in the world, finding ways to kind of circumvent the laws and regulations on Tau Ceti, the planet that you're running around in, and leaving with items that are beneficial to each of them as companies. Doing quests for these factions is the core loop of Marathon. Whereas the focus in other games is about progressing through like crafting or literally just enjoying the loop of the game, Marathon is about giving yourself a quest and an objective and loading in either by yourself or with friends and trying to do your quest and your friends' quests and then leaving successfully. But even still, again, a lot of the quests don't actually need you to exfiltrate to complete the quest. Some of them are just like, go do this thing 3 times, and then if you do that, quest complete. I think the lenience of these faction quests is what allows the rest of the game to be so unbelievably hostile. This is the other thing that really sets Marathon apart, is that it has a strong PvP focus. Unlike in Arc Raiders, where you are likely to be working together with other people you see out in the world, in Marathon, it's really kill on sight. Narratively also, you know, Arc Raiders has its whole thing about like being the last bastion of humanity. Marathon is about like, if you see another runner, they are probably a corporate spy that you have been hired to kill. So you should probably kill them on sight as well. There are very few instances where you'll be working together with people in Marathon. I actually think one of the most notable things you can point to about the development of this game to prove this fact is that proximity chat wasn't introduced until much later in its actual like testing phase. At launch, the idea of talking with other players around in the world was not even an idea. And now it is, but people really aren't using it. I'll tell you that much. I have not had a single experience where I have met somebody out in the world and been like, we're cool. Let's not shoot each other. The time to kill is low. Players do want to kill you. All of the robots, the UESC robots that are all over the place, they also want to kill you and probably will many, many times. There are poisonous plants all over the place. There are claymore mines all over the place. There's one map where it's literally just raining lava every once in a while. It's a harsh world. It's a harsh world. And that back and forth between I have a quest that I want to complete and the world wants to kill me and will kill me at every available opportunity means that this game is being played, in my eyes at least, very differently than how I played other extraction shooters. For example, there are some quests and objectives that are really fun to play with friends. They kind of make sense to play with multiple people. Ones like, killing other runners or killing UESC robots or like even breaking windows. Those are the kinds of experiences that it's fun to do with a group of people because you're just running around, you're being as loud as possible, you're trying to attract attention so you can complete these quests. Other ones that involve, being on one side of the map, picking something up and then bringing it to the other side of the map all in one run, those are objectives that I find are best played solo. And that's the thing that's maybe been most surprising to me is I've probably played an equal amount of this game solo and with squads. I'm paraphrasing a post I saw on Blue Sky, so I'll try to take a screenshot of it and put it on the screen. But the single player experience of Marathon really actually does feel a lot like Alien Isolation. If you are spending your time playing solo matches, a lot of it, if you want to survive and do the quests that you have assigned to you, it's going to involve like crouching at all times, making sure you're not making any noise, probably playing a character like the assassin so you can go invisible at times very selectively, or recon so you can see all of the things around you, and you're just like sneaking around.
So every single plan involves sneaking somewhere. We sneak over here. We got to do a little sneak in there. Where are we going? We're sneaking somewhere.
And it's an exhilarating and fun experience. And you probably will die a lot. People will sneak up on you. People will kill you. But, you'll get better at it, obviously. But I'll be honest, this is not an aspect of the game that I expected to connect with literally at all in the first place. There was no world where I thought that Marathon would be like a fun single-player experience considering it was built from the ground up. At least I thought it was being built from the ground up to be a multiplayer-focused experience. I think all of this comes into focus with Rook, which is one of the shells you can play as. Rook is like a prototype version of all of the other shells, and with Rook, it's like a completely different video game. You are playing solo, you can't squad up with people, you're playing solo, and you're dropping into squad matches that are halfway over already. You're not allowed to bring any objectives with you or any gear. They just give you like a little bit of randomized gear and a backpack. And your whole job as Rook is to just run around the map, pick up a bunch of gear from, the dead bodies of all the other players who have been killed already throughout the course of the match, and then exfil without dying. And Rook basically just exists to like get a bunch of credits and fill up your vault with stuff that you can then bring into another run. I do find there is a little bit of like a harsh juxtaposition between the Rook experience, which I think is very fun, and the actual feeling I have about collecting and using gear and loot, which I have almost no connection to. I do think I'm an outlier there, though. I mean, when I'm playing with other people, frequently they're running into matches with, a bunch of gear that they have from their vault, and I'm usually using the sponsored kit, which is a free gun and some ammo and the worst health packs and shield packs that you can bring with you. But for me, just because I don't care about any of my gear that much, I also don't really care what I'm starting with. I'm just kind of in it for the thrill of maybe finding some fun stuff to use throughout that run specifically, but I don't really care if I bring it with me into the next run. Again, the only thing I really care about are the objectives and the missions. And that's really the core of Marathon. Marathon is that same thing for extraction shooters that Destiny was for MMOs. It is an interesting on-ramp into the genre, but it's also kind of a new take on it. And it doesn't really seem that way from the outside when you first start playing it, but the more of it you play, the more it reveals itself to be this like really infectious loop. And that loop being so separate from what I experienced when playing games like Tarkov and Arc Raiders also allows Marathon to stand apart in a very crowded space. I won't get too deep into this, but Marathon, when it was announced, was lumped into the same obviously doomed quote-unquote pile of live service games that was like being sent out to die. Sony greenlit 12 live service games and canceled most of them. We're seeing games like Concord and Highguard get shut down left and right. Do you even remember Hyperscape? The Ubisoft one? It was supposed to be like their Fortnite. But I really bristle at this idea that nobody wants this style of game anymore because boy, are there a lot of people playing this style of game. People are playing these games and people love playing these games. There are obviously very dumb executives sitting in boardrooms at the highest levels of some of these companies being like, Fortnite makes a lot of money. We can just make a Fortnite, right? And that's obviously not true. But when you say nobody wants this, what you're really saying is like, don't take a chance on a new thing. And in the case of Marathon, I'm glad they took a chance on the new thing. And I think it's interesting that Marathon got lumped into that kind of discourse in the first place, because again, Sony greenlit 12 live service games and canceled most of them. Marathon is one of the only ones that made it out. It's because they had some faith in it. And rightfully, people love Marathon. Marathon doesn't have the same problem that a lot of these other games have. And a lot of that is due to both, again, Bungie's gunplay, but also its aesthetics. It looks markedly different than basically anything I've ever played in my life. And that's huge. That's a big point in Marathon's favor just on the jump. The fact that the gameplay loop is not only different, but like good and interesting, icing on the cake, baby. There is this whole world of YouTube grifter that really revels in the failure of video games, spends an entire hype cycle leading up to its release, hoping for its demise, talking about how it's, gonna be terrible, gonna be the next Concord, quote unquote. But if anyone was gonna make the next Destiny work, wouldn't it be the company that made Destiny? That ideology is so divorced from actually playing the video game and seeing how people who are playing the video game and enjoying it are talking about it. I do think there's a world where internally, maybe Sony has these like super inflated ideas of what Marathon can and should be from a numbers perspective, but like, we won't really ever know those numbers for sure. All I can tell you is that I am playing Marathon. A lot of my friends are playing Marathon. A lot of people who I know who are very offline are also playing Marathon. And we're all playing Marathon together and having a great time. People are writing articles about how they're dreaming about Marathon. It's a good video game. In fact, it's one of my favorite video games released this year at a time where there's also Pocopia and Slay the Spire 2. I feel like I could just play those 3 games for the rest of the year, and that'd be totally fine. Marathon is just this unbelievably tense, well-designed, lore-rich experience that I really hope goes for a long time. If you're at Sony and you're watching this, give it like at least a year. I have high hopes for this thing. I think you should check it out maybe if you haven't. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't. You can go to patreon.com/wavelengths if you want even more videos from me. If you want to see the archives of all my streams, like for example, my Marathon streams that I've been doing pretty frequently, you can go watch them there. I'll catch you later, everybody.